desserts. And I just want to let you know that first of all, I always ask people when I'm doing an air fryer demo if they're going to, if they all own an air fryer. So I don't know how many of you actually own one, or you're going to think about getting one, or whatever your situation is at the present. But typically, when I talk to people about air fryers, an air fryer is kind of a real personal thing, because they have limited capacity, and that's one of the downfalls of an air fryer. I mean, you can't cook an awful lot in them. If it's one or two of you at home, they sell nice little air fryers that are just one compartment, that aren't real hard to use. They also sell air fryers that are bigger, much bigger. And when I did an air fryer, when I bought my first air fryer, it was a one compartment air fryer. I just felt that it never was enough room for me to cook everything that I wanted to cook. So I upgraded to one of those toaster oven looking air fryers. And it worked out great. It has a little bit more capacity because it's like a toaster oven. You can put all of your food on a rack. The only problem with it that I found was that the cleanup on it was really, really time consuming. And I wasn't really happy with that part of it. It was one of these air fryers that was an all-in-one machine. It air fried, it steamed, it toasted, it broiled, it did so many different functions. And I just used it for the air fryer. But every time I did, it would because you put your food on a rack, and it drips down into the bottom of the air fryer. And for me, the cleanup just took a lot of time and effort. And so I did some research on it, and I wanted a machine that was a little more capacity, but I wanted something that was easier to clean up. So I ended up with this fella here, and I absolutely love it. I have had it for a little bit over a year now, and I love it. It is just probably one of the best air fryer experiences I've ever had. And we use it so often that I've actually made a space on my kitchen counter for it. And we use it almost every other day when we're reheating things or whatever. And to be honest with you, so when you think about buying your air fryer, one of the biggest considerations, I think, is how much you can cook in it. So this one, which I really like about it, first of all, the cleanup is really easy on it. It's all metal. It's got a nonstick surface on the inside. It works beautifully. There's no, the nonstick surface works really, really well. Nothing ever sticks on it. Sometimes I just wipe it out depending on what it is I'm cooking. The other thing about this machine is it's got two drawers. So one drawer, and the drawers are pretty big capacity. I mean, they're not real small. They are, I can fit quite a bit in here actually. And to be honest, I've fit little loaf pans in here where I've baked some things, but it's just a nice size of an air fryer. And the other part of it is it's a double drawer. So what that means is that this drawer will cook at one temperature for one amount of time, and you can cook something completely different in the second drawer at another temperature for a whole nother amount of time. So very, as far as like cooking for a bigger family, when I take these air fryers and I do demos other places, I have to cook more in them. So for me, it's just nicer to be able to cook a lot more at one time. So that was my consideration for it. I just really wanted something that was just a little bit bigger. So when you're cooking in an air fryer, one of the things you always have to remember, and we're going to be making desserts so that it isn't quite as relevant, but when you're cooking in an air fryer in general, you always want to do things on one level. So if you're cooking French fries, you don't want to mound them. You don't want to have a big pile of French fries in the drawer. The drawer's got a big capacity in it, but I can't fill it, mound it, fill it all the way to the top with fries, because if I do that, the fries on the top and the fries on the bottom will get cooked. The fries in the middle of the pile will not. So anything you cook in an air fryer should be one level, so it's always exposed to the heat. The way that an air fryer works, it's essentially a convection oven. And I don't know how many of you have a kitchen oven that is a convection oven. A lot of people do have those now. They're great for baking. Basically what a convection oven is, it's excuse me, it's an oven with a fan in it that actually circulates the heat. So it gets really hot because the heat keeps moving and it circulates the heat. So it takes a lot less time to cook. So typically, if you're baking or cooking something in an air fryer, you want to do it 25 degrees less than you would normally. And you also want to do it 25% less time than you would normally do it. So if I'm doing chicken wings in the oven, you know, in a standard oven, I would cook them for probably at 400 degrees for maybe, I'd say 25 to 30 minutes. If I'm doing them in the air fryer, I would do them probably 375 for about maybe 20 minutes, okay? So always a little bit of a decrease in both temperature and in timing, and then you should be good to go. One of the things, so basically when you're cooking in an air fryer, the heat and the fan circulate throughout the drawer. And the reason an air fryer works the way it does is because the air circulates in this compartment, and this actually has a little pull-out kind of a rack in it, so with holes. So when and the rest of it is just it's a solid drawer. So when I put this in and I put my food on top of the rack, that heat will circulate around this rack. It will go through the holes, and anything that is exposed on the bottom will cook as well. So you don't have to flip things over if you don't need to. There's a couple instances where I would use something to cook my food on in the air fryer. So if I'm cooking something that is very delicate and I want to be able to pick it up after it is done, maybe it's a little hard to pick up with tongs or so forth, I will use a couple of things are available. There's these little parchment papers that you can get. They're basically a round sheet of parchment, and then you would just put them right in your air fryer like this, and they kind of just sit in here, and the air circulates through around the paper, and it works. But anything you put on the parchment, you're going to have to flip it over, because right now it's only exposed to the heat on the top. But it helps. Like I did a baked brie in this, which worked out absolutely beautifully. I think it was like in there for only 8 minutes, and it was a nice 6-inch round brie. And when I was done with it, I just lifted this right up and took a spatula and pushed it out onto a platter, and it was good to go. So you can put toppings on your brie, you know, you can do all kinds of things, and it makes it a little bit easier to handle it. The other thing you can do is you can put in these little these little aluminum foils, or just tear a piece of foil off of a roll. And then I kind of fold them in half because it kind of fits perfectly when I put them in here, just like this. The only thing that you have to remember when you're using something like this, or the parchment, or even if it's just something that is just a little bit lighter. So say I was cooking, and I did this one time before, the heating compartment element on the air fryer is on the top. So it's right up here. There is nothing on the bottom to heat. The fan and the heating element are on the top of the machine. And if something is not heavy, so if it's, I did quesadillas one time, and the quesadilla, because it's folded and the tortilla doesn't, it isn't really, really heavy. As it was cooking, the tortilla lifted, and the paper on it that I put the quesadilla on kind of pushed itself up onto the heating element and just caught fire. Not a big deal, guys. It's all, you're going to know. It just, you kind of smell it a little bit. You pull your drawer out, you remedy the situation. It's not a big issue. So one of the ways that you can remedy that, if something is really light, just take a toothpick and insert it into the quesadilla. Sometimes shrimp are a little bit lighter. They don't, if they're smaller shrimp and you don't want them to go floating around in your compartment, you can throw put a toothpick in them right into the parchment, and it'll hold it down. So it works beautifully either way. If you guys have any questions, you can just let us know. Cassandra will, you can type it in the chat. I think Cassandra mentioned that. And then as we're going along, she can ask me the questions. I like answering questions when they're timely. And that way you guys are thinking about what you want to know. So basically, we're going to be doing some desserts today. I'm going to do 2 desserts. I'm going to do apple pie wontons, and I am going to do an air fryer mocha pudding cakes. You can bake in your air fryer, which works really, really well. And one of the nice things about it is if you have baking pans or baking equipment that is small enough, you can use that to bake in. So we have some ramekins that we're going to use for our mocha pudding cakes. And I can fit 2 in each drawer. So I could theoretically, I could cook 4 of these at one time. So you guys can see I can get 2 of them in here, okay? But they do sell little loaf pans. You can make little zucchini bread, banana bread. I've seen carrot cake recipes for this. I've done you could do a cheesecake. I've done cheesecake. They sell small springform pans. So, the sky's the limit as long as you have the equipment that will work in the air fryer. I mean, obviously, if you're baking something, you have to put it in something. You can't just dump it into the air fryer compartment.
Now, Mary,
yes.
there was a question. Sorry, sure. While we're talking about equipment, okay. There was a question that said, no air fryer, but my stove has ability to cook on convection mode. Is that the same as an air fryer in terms of cooking ability?
No, well, not the way an air fryer works. The reason an air fryer gets things crispy and works really quickly is because of the size of the compartment. Your oven is big. It's got a big space. I mean, it works beautifully. It bakes cookies really nicely, bakes cakes really nicely. It will do like chicken, baked fried chicken, but it's a little bit different because the space is just too big. I have seen that they are coming out with convection ovens that have an air fryer capacity with them. And I don't know how they're doing it. But basically, when you do an air fryer, it has to be a smaller space. That's why most air fryers are so small, because that air circulates in a small space and gets things really crispy really fast. It works beautifully on frozen foods, works beautifully on anything that is battered with like a breadcrumb batter. So, but in a normal regular oven, you'll still get things crispy, but it's going to take you a lot longer, and not like an air fryer does. Okay. They're working on the problem, guys. I'm sure there'll be ovens out there with, you'll be able to buy them sooner or later. So, all right. So let's go ahead, and I want to get these mocha pudding cakes in the oven because they take a little time to bake. They're about 15 minutes. So I want to get those going. I have some, just some sugar, we're only making 2. So, you can make more than that. You can make more batter, and you can do these in batches. Works beautifully. If your air fryer does not, if it needs to preheat, you need to preheat the air fryer, because when you put your food in it, and if you start the timer, if it hasn't preheated, you're going to have to add on extra time in order for the air fryer to preheat. This air fryer, as soon as I hit that button, it goes to 350 degrees. I don't have to preheat it, which is really, really nice. Okay, so I have some flour here. I have sugar. I have baking cocoa, baking powder, and a pinch of salt. This all goes into my bowl. So, you just have to look at your recipes. I'm sure Cassandra has gotten them to you somehow. And then you can follow the recipes, and they work really, really well for you guys. I am going to remelt my butter, because as I was sitting here, the house is a little chilly, and I'm going to make sure that it's nice and melted. Oh, not 5 minutes, guys, 5 seconds, because it's only not even a tablespoon of butter. Okay, I just want to have it melted so that it's pourable. Hold on 1 second. I have some milk. I'm going to add some milk to this. And my butter, hopefully, yes, it has melted. That's going in. Okay. So again, I could double this, make 4 of them. I could triple it, and I could quadruple it, make as many as I really want. It's totally up to you guys. If you only need 2, just make the recipe for 2. It should be, it should work out for you really well. So I'm going to stir this basically like a cake batter. You don't have to use a mixer. This is just a hand mixed cake. Very simple to do. All right. So my batter kind of comes out like a normal cake batter. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I have a little bit of baking spray. And we're just going to spray our ramekins so that these hopefully will come out. We'll see if I can get these out once they are done. The other thing I've made in here that works really, really well, that's kind of similar, is the chocolate lava cakes work beautifully in this. When you pull them out, they are super, super, you know, super, super lava like, you know, when you cut into them, they're beautiful. So it works really, really well. So I'm going to go ahead and just fill these up, you know, divide the batter as much as I can. Probably should add, probably put too much in the first one, but that's okay. All right, so we're going to just take a little bit of that batter from the first one and add it to the second one. I want these kind of to be the same. The baking powder in here will allow these to rise, so you should be good to go, okay? I'm going to just scrape my spatula, get this put back in. All right, now I have a little topping that's going to go on here. And the topping is essentially brown sugar and a little bit of cocoa powder. And I'm just kind of mashing that together with my fingers, okay? Kind of like a streusel without the flour. I'm going to throw that right on top. All right, that's going right on top. And what we're going to do now is I have some hot water, and I am going to take some hot water and add it to a little bit of coffee that I brewed, just a tiny, tiny bit. I have a little bit of brewed coffee, a little bit of hot water, about a tablespoon is going in. So nice and hot at this point. And then I'm going to pour this over the top. All right. This is going to go right on top. It's just like this. All right. So now these are going to go in my drawer. And I've got my one drawer pulled out. I'm going to throw this in right on top. I don't have to put anything in there. It's all good to go. I'm going to start my machine. I'm going to hit the first #1 air fryer because we're using the first drawer. And then I am going to take and hit the air fry button. I'm going to bake these at 350 degrees. And I'm going to start with 15 minutes. You can always add time. You can't take time away. So if you've overcooked these guys, that's not, not a good thing. And you'd have to start all over again. So I'm doing it 15 minutes. If I need to put these back in, I could certainly do that. So it's not an issue. So I'm going to start the machine, and our cakes are starting to bake. Okay. So if you have any questions, let me know. The chocolate lava cakes are a little bit different than this. They have oil in the batter, but they work beautifully as well. They puff up. They kind of souffle in the ramekins, and they work really well. So, again, like I said, you can pretty much bake most anything in here as long as you have the equipment to put it in. Do you have a question, Cassandra?
Yep, Angela wants to ask, are you preheating the machine for this recipe?
No, I don't have to preheat this machine. This machine preheats on its own. As soon as I hit the button, the temperature will automatically go to 350. So if your machine, and what I always recommend is that if you buy an air fryer or you have one, read the instruction manual from front to back, because every machine is different. Every single machine is different, and you may need to preheat your machine. This one does not need to be preheated, which is a nice factor on that. Okay. I do a lot of Instant Pot cooking, and Instant Pots, when they first came out, they did certain things. They were one way. Now, I don't know, 3 or 4 years later, you've got a million Instant Pots in between, and every single one of them is different. So anytime I get a new Instant Pot, I always read the instruction manual, because you just never know, they could change things, and it could be updated a little bit. And, every one of them is different. So it's just it's an interesting concept. And actually, one of the things that when I bought my first air fryer, I didn't care for the way that it cooked. I used it, I think maybe 5 times, and then I put it away and never used it again. This one bakes really, really well, and I think they've improved them over time. The first one I got was probably, I'd say 10 years ago. So it's been a while, but this one is probably, the best machine that I think is on the market right now. And I'm real happy that I splurged on it. Although now for Christmas, they are $100 less than when I bought them. So, yes, I think you can get them at Sam's Club, and they are a lot less expensive, which is fine. That's fine. I got my use out of it. It's awesome. We use it, like I said, every other day. So I'm gonna go ahead and now we're gonna go ahead and make some a little bit of apple pie wontons. I couldn't think of the word. And basically what I'm gonna do with this, it's very easy to do. I have some apple pie filling, and this is something that you can buy from the grocery store. And it's essentially apples that are in a like a syrup that has kind of thickened with a little bit of cornstarch in it, okay? And I'm gonna dump that into my bowl. So I have my apple pie filling. Now you could do this with any pie filling that you see in the grocery store. There's so many of them. There's peach, there's cherry, there's blueberry, there's many, many different fillings. So it does not have to be just the apples. You know, it works with a lot of different fillings. I'm gonna add, because this is a little tart, I'm gonna add some sugar and some cinnamon to this. And we're just gonna stir that together. This will kind of thicken it a little bit more and allow this to not weep so much when it's in the wonton wrappers, okay? So I have my filling ready to go. And I'm gonna grab my little wonton wrappers, which are super simple. And in the meantime, what I'm gonna do is, and your instructions kind of tell you to make a caramel sauce or use a store-bought caramel sauce. I'm gonna show you how to make a caramel sauce. And instead of adding it to the filling, I'm gonna just drizzle it on top of the wontons. You can do either or. If you have a store-bought caramel sauce, you can drizzle a little bit on the inside, and then you can actually, you know, put a little bit on top of your wontons when they come out of the air fryer. So to make your own homemade caramel sauce, real simple. You can't do it in the air fryer. This is made on top of the stove. And really simply, what I'm gonna do is I've got some water and I have some sugar. And your recipe, I think you have your recipe, it comes with the air fryer wonton recipe. I'm gonna put a little bit of water in here. It's not very much. It's probably about a couple tablespoons, okay? And then I'm gonna put this over some heat. Now, in order to, your recipe doesn't say it, but this is a little trick. In order to keep your caramel sauce from seizing and becoming crystallized sugar again, I am gonna add just a little bit, a little bit of cream of tartar. And when I say a little bit, I mean just a little tiny bit, okay? That's gonna go in my pot. The cream of tartar keeps the crystals from recrystallizing. And if you've ever had that happen when you melt sugar, that is not a fun thing to happen. And essentially what happens is the sugar seizes up and it becomes a solid form of sugar again. And then you have a heck of a time melting it and getting it to, typically you just have to throw it away and start over again. So in order to remedy that and to not have that happen, just a little tiny pinch of cream of tartar, and that usually does the trick. Now, once I put this on the heat, and once this comes to a boil, I'm not gonna touch my caramel. I'm gonna let the sugar dissolve. I'm gonna let the sugar get hot, and I'm gonna wait until it starts to become a caramel color. And I'm gonna kind of keep an eye on it. So once that sugar takes on a brown looking color, then I can finish it as my caramel sauce. And the way to finish a caramel sauce is essentially just to add a little bit of heavy cream to it and to add just a squeeze of lemon. You can also thin it a little bit with some milk. We'll see if we need to thin it or not. But I wanted to show you how to make a caramel sauce because I heard that Saunders was having a hard time stocking their hot fudge and their caramel these days. So I don't know how available it is. And my favorite caramel sauce store-bought is actually Saunders. So if you can't find it, caramel is a really easy thing to make, but you just got to keep an eye on it. Okay, you can't take your eyes off of it. All right. So I have my filling here, and then I have my wonton wrappers here. And essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my wonton wrappers, and they come in a package. They usually are sold either in the health food section of the grocery store or in the produce department. So either or, you can do, you know, either look either place. Kroger, I think they were in the kind of like an Asian section where they sold tofu and stuff like that. So, you know, it's pretty easy to find. I'm going to just keep an eye on my caramel. And so when I am going to go ahead and make my little wrappers, what I like to do is I like to make them all. I put them on a sheet pan, get them all made. And then when I am ready to bake them, I bake them all at once. I just bake them in batches. And then that's one of those things, you know, the air fryer can only hold so much. So if I make an entire sheet pan of wonton, you know, apple pie wontons, it's going to take a little while for me to bake them. These are a nice thing to do if you know, make them first. If you're baking or cooking other things, you're in the kitchen, the beeper goes off, you go ahead and you take that batch out, you put another batch in. It's just the way it works with an air fryer, because the capacity is just so much. And, you know, unfortunately, it's not like an oven where I could probably fit, you know, 50 on a cookie sheet, but it doesn't bake as well. So it just does a little bit better job. So I am going to go ahead and I'm going to take one of these little apple slices and I am going to put them right in my wonton wrapper. Can you guys see this? That was what I was going to ask you. I don't know if you can see this. If you cannot, do I need to move it forward, a little backward? Can you guys see that?
I can just see the corner of it. Maybe move it towards you a little bit.
Towards me. Better?
Towards you, yep.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, that's better.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to just take my finger, a little water, and I'm going to do two sides of the wrapper. And then what I'm going to do is take the corners and just essentially seal them just like this. Okay. A little bit of the liquid comes out. It's okay. But I'm going to make sure that I seal them pretty well. All right. So the water will help. When you buy wonton wrappers in the store, they have a little white, like a little white powder on that. That powder is cornstarch. So it helps the wonton wrappers not to stick together when they sell them. And essentially, if you know, if I'm going to put them together, the cornstarch actually helps to stick the wrappers together. So it works really beautifully. I've actually used wonton wrappers as well to make raviolis or to make pierogi. If I'm doing, you know, really quick, if I've got some extra filling left and I don't feel like making dough, I always have some wonton wrappers frozen and I'll pull them out and just, you know, use them for that. So little tiny purses. Okay. And I'm going to grab another one. We'll make a few of them so I can fill my basket up. All right. Again, make sure that I get this nice and sealed. It's the whole trick on this guy. And this one's just a little big, so I'm going to just cut him. Take a knife and just cut him off. Some of these apple slices are just a little big. If you use the blueberry or the cherry, they're not quite, you know, they're a little bit more, they're a little smaller, but the apple pie ones taste really, really good. So that's why I chose that for you guys, to show you guys how to do that. All right, so I've got another one here, checking my caramel. My caramel is looking, because this is a very small amount of caramel. This is almost there. And I don't know if you guys can see that, but right now it is a caramel color, okay? And depending on how caramely I want this to be, I can cook it for just another minute or so. Once that caramel hits the degree I want it, I'm going to add a little milk to it. I'm in a little cream. Be careful when you add the cream because it's really, really hot. This is about 200 and maybe 30 degrees. You want to be really careful when you add a liquid to hot sugar, because it will bubble over if you're not careful. So, but you know, if you don't, this is a time when you don't have the cats or the dogs running around and the kids, you know, squealing around in the kitchen. It's just not a good time when you're working with hot sugar. So I'm going to pour all of that heavy cream in here. And if I really wanted to make it really, I'm going to add a little bit of, this is just a little bit of lemon juice. Okay, so here I have my beautiful caramel. You guys can kind of see this. And I mean, literally that took what, 10 minutes, not even? A beautiful caramel sauce, okay? And as it sits, it will thicken. But once it sits and it starts to cool a little bit, it will thicken. I'll show you when we actually plate it and put it on the plates. All right, so we've got another, one more of my little apples. Just like this. Now, because I want these to cook, now I could cook these on something. If they leak, they leak. I'm not a big, you know, I'm not really upset if they start to leak. I could put them on foil, but then I would have to flip them halfway through and really don't want to do that. So I prefer just to put them right in the basket. So when you're using an air fryer, one of the misnomers of using an air fryer is that you never ever use any oil at all. And that is not true, guys. The problem is oil is great as far as making things crispy and making things brown. So when you're cooking in an air fryer, and maybe not so much baking, but when you're making, say, if I was going to do chicken breast that I had breaded in an air fryer, and one of the things you have to remember too is that you don't want to use a wet batter. So anytime you're going to be making quote unquote fried chicken, you really don't want to use a wet batter. I had a fella came up to me after a class one time and he told me that he made blooming onions and he had dipped the entire onion in a wet batter. And when he put it in the air fryer, he said it was such a mess. The entire batter fell right off the onion. Well, the problem is deep frying in oil, when you put something like a blooming onion or batter fried chicken in the oil, the hot oil immediately seizes up the batter and it starts to cook it. So it's not going to drip off of the food. When you put it in an air fryer, that's not the case. I mean, it's heat and it's eventually going to start crisping it, but not quite the same as as oil. Okay. So you got to remember, it's always good to use a batter that is more of a breadcrumb batter. Maybe you could dip it in flour. And I do deep fried kind of ravioli in here where I take frozen ravioli, I bread them I put some flour on them, I dip them in an egg, and then I put a little bit of panko on top, and that's my batter, because what's going to make them crispy is the panko. It's the breadcrumbs that's going to make it crispy, not necessarily a batter fried item like you would do in regular oil. Okay, so oil, though, is something that is going to make things brown. And I always spray just a tiny bit. And I'm just using Pam. And I'm going to tell you one little thing about using a spray oil, an aerosol oil. I'm going to lay my little wontons in here, one after the other. And I'll show you guys how this looks in here as soon as I get these in. Okay, so there is my little wontons laying in the thing. And I think I could get about 6 to 8 in one basket. If I lay them, I don't want them to necessarily overlap because they won't brown where they've overlapped. So again, you got to make sure that you give them some space. Okay. So I'm going to take my oil and just a tiny spritz on each wonton, and that will help them to brown and to crisp up a little bit better. Okay. So there is my first, my cakes are, temperature is done. I'm going to take a look at these guys. Oh my gosh, they are completely done, guys. No residue on my fork, my knife. I mean, that is a knife, not a fork. I'm going to just pull these out. Again, you just got to make sure that you pull these out and don't burn yourself because they're really, really super hot. Okay, so these are my cakes. And in a minute, once these cool for just a second, I'm going to see if I can unmold one. And I'm going to show you the inside of the cake. Okay, so this took 15 minutes. And like I said, always err on the side of caution. If your recipe says 15 to 20 minutes, do it for 15 minutes. Everybody's air fryer is different. Don't put it in for too long. Otherwise, you may end up overcooking them. Okay, so for the wontons, I am going to put these in for about, I think they're about 7 minutes. I think I'll do 6. We'll see. I'm going to do the second air fryer. I am going to do hit air fry. I'm doing 350, I believe, on these. I want to make sure. Yes, 350. An air fryer only goes up to 400. So you can't cook anything really above that. And I'm going to hit the timer for about 7 minutes. Okay. So we're going to hit start. And we're going to see how this works. Okay. So,
Mary.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Madeline had a question.
Sure.
What was the cream of tartar for again?
The cream of tartar is to allow the caramel not to seize up. Sometimes, and I'm not a good physicist. I don't know the science of it, but it's happened to me before. And essentially what happens is when you're melting caramel, when you're melting sugar, sometimes the grains of sugar will start to climb up the side of the pan and will start to fall back into the pan of sugar, of melting sugar. And it will basically, what it does is it seizes up the sugar so it becomes a solid state again. Now there's two ways you can remedy that. One of them is the old-fashioned way, is to actually take a little paintbrush or a little basting brush and dip it in water. And as you're cooking the sugar, you can kind of take that brush and just brush the sides of the pot, inside of the pot, with water. That will push the sugar back down into the pot, and sometimes it remedies the situation. I have found the best way to remedy it is to actually just take a little pinch of cream of tartar, put it in with the sugar that has been unmelted. So I put the sugar in the pot, I put a little tiny bit of water and a pinch of cream of tartar, and it will keep it from seizing. And seizing is just a problem that you have sometimes when you melt it, and then you have to start all over again. So, if you can eliminate that problem and make a caramel sauce right off the bat, it works beautifully, okay? So that's the reason for it. So basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take these off. These are really still hot, and we'll see how if I can unmold these. These seem to be, I can unmold these. I got a little fudgy topping from that brown sugar that I put on here. So we've got a little bit of like a fudginess going on. It's really awesome, guys. And I'm just gonna flip these upside down if I can, because I want you guys to see what this looks like, okay? So I think what I'm gonna do, because it's not really big enough to do it like that, I'm just gonna go like this. Let's see if I can unmold it this way. We'll see if it works. Come on, unmold. When I did it with the, you don't have to do it this way. You can just leave them in the ramekins. I'm not saying that you have to unmold it, but, here we go. There we go. They kind of stuck a little bit, so I should have sprayed it just a little bit more, but you guys will kind of get the picture of it. I wanted to cut this open to show you what it looks like, because it's just a beautiful little cake on the inside, really soft and tender. It's really super hot still. So if you guys can see that, the cake is just, it's awesome. It smells delicious, and I haven't tasted it yet, but it is really, really a nice little cake. So, if I was going to serve this, I would either serve it, unmold it and serve it upside down, or just leave it in the ramekins and they can eat it right out of the ramekins. These ramekins are not hard to find. I go to, even dollar stores carry ramekins like this. You can get them either like this, or you can get them aluminum, the ones that are disposable. So either one works, and you have a beautiful little vessel to cook anything. I've done creme brulees in the air fryer, which is really nice. It takes like 5 minutes to make a creme brulee. It really works well. So, lots of different options there. But, if you spray it, I would spray it a little bit more, because obviously it stuck just a little tiny bit on the sides. But I just wanted to show you the inside of the cake after I took it out of the mold. Okay, so that's what that looks like, guys. And as I was saying about the pan, one of the reasons I have you guys read your instruction manual, there are some air fryers that are made with, and I don't know what the material is that they use to make them with, but they say that if you spray it with an aerosol spray like this, like a pre-made PAM or something to this effect, it sometimes over time it will wear away the non-stick coating on the inside of your air fryer. Okay, so this one did not say that in the instruction manual, so I've been using this, and it has worked beautifully. I've not had an issue. If your machine is one of those where they recommend you don't use an aerosol, you can buy one of those little pump oil spray bottles where you fill it with your own oil, you pump it, and then you spray it, and it sprays your own oil that you fill it with. I always have a problem with those. I probably own 2 or 3 in my time, and they either get plugged up, or when you pump them, they don't spray real well. They kind of spit at you. So I got frustrated with it, and I started using the PAM, and I have had not an issue with it. But again, read your instruction manual to see what it says, because it may be a little bit different for you guys. Okay. All right. So basically, once this comes out, I'm going to move this off to the side. And we're going to throw in, I'm going to take this for my little, wontons. I just did a demo. I don't remember where it was, but I did little Caribbean wontons where I took some cream cheese. It was Philadelphia cream cheese softened. I put a mashed banana in it, some shredded coconut, sweetened shredded coconut. I added some pineapple, drained and squeezed out pineapple, crushed pineapple, mixed that all together. And then at the end, I added some marshmallow fluff to it. Mixed that all together, and then I filled my little wontons with that, and that was really delicious. So, you got a few options there as far as even a sweet filling for a wonton wrapper. You can do so many savory wontons like pork, or I've done little taquitos where taking a little, I've done corn tortillas, but they tend to fall apart on you. So I'm going to try them next time with flour tortillas. And I fill them with it's basically a raw ground beef, mixed with a little bit of taco seasoning. That's all there is to it. And I mix that together, and I put a little piece of that in my tortilla, and I bake it in the air fryer. And it is the most delicious little taquito appetizer, and serve it with salsa. Super, super easy to do. Fried pickle chips work beautifully as an appetizer. So these are some things that you can kind of think about, for the holidays or whatever, for kids or for your adults, whatever. The nice thing about it is I know it doesn't cook a lot at one time, but one of the ways you can remedy that as well is if you make them all, put them on a sheet pan. When your guests arrive, just toss them in your oven to warm them up just a little bit. You're not looking to crisp them up, but if you want to serve something hot or warm, you can do it in the oven and it works beautifully. Okay. Yes.
First, a couple comments.
Okay.
Let's see. Mary D said earlier when you were mentioning the Saunders sauce
Yes.
that she read in the paper that Saunders is not making their sauces because they're currently looking for a new factory to manufacture them.
Okay. So they probably will have a little bit of a shortage, maybe.
Yeah. And then Angela says, oh my gosh, it smells so good. So I wonder if she gets to bake along with you at home. I was thinking, oh, it must smell so good.
Oh my gosh,
and Faye
that's awesome.
has asked, Faye has asked,
really, that cake, when I opened up that cake and I cut it in half, oh my gosh, it just, yeah, I mean, talk about it kind of reminded me a little bit of like an easy bake oven when you were a kid and you had your little easy bake oven and you baked this little thing under a light bulb, you know what I mean? And it came out and it was beautiful. Same thing with this, but I mean, it's on a little bit more of a grown-up stage and it works out beautifully.
Yeah. Faye has also asked, how did you make the brie cheese you mentioned in the beginning?
Basically, all I did was I took brie, about wheel of brie, unwrapped it, and I let it, to be honest with you, I let it come to room temperature. That way, when it came to room temperature, I didn't bake it quite as long. If it's still really cold when you put it in the air fryer, what happens is the outside of the brie will start to brown a little bit, and the inside still stays a little bit underdone. I want it to be oozy. When I open up that brie with a knife, I want it to just like spill out. And if you bring it up to room temperature, that works really well. And you can do anything you want. I've done like just sprinkled some brown sugar and butter on it and baked it, and it all melts and it just gets it really. So when you cut it open, all of that drips in. I made a pear compote. So basically I took pears, peeled them and diced them, and I threw them in with some cranberries, dried cranberries, in a pot with a little bit of sugar and some water, and I let those boil until they got syrupy, and I served it with that. So, it's the holidays. I kind of think, if I just did a wheel of brie with maybe some brown sugar and butter, that's good. But if I could do something a little extra, it looks even better and it's a little more festive. So the pear compote was delicious. It just, really complemented the brie really well. I've done candied pecans. I've candied some pecans really quickly, and you can do that in the air fryer too. Basically melted butter and brown sugar, and then toss your pecans in it and throw it in your air fryer. And 4 minutes later, you have candied pecans. It works beautifully. So lots of different options for that. But the brie works really well. In the oven, it takes a good 20 minutes to a half hour. In the air fryer, it's about 6 to 8 minutes. So to do a normal like Costco sized wheel of brie, one of those smaller ones. Okay. I'm going to take my wontons out. And they're a little hot, and I've got my beautiful wontons here. Trying to pick these up, and I probably can just use my fingers because they're not so hot anymore. But I love these guys. They're really super crispy. And I'm just gonna, I'm gonna make these 4 so that I show you guys how that's done. So, I mean, the inside of the air fryer, nothing sticks. It doesn't get super dirty. When I'm done with it, what I typically do is I put it in my sink. I spray a little bit of that Dawn, spray, or just put a little bit of detergent in there, some water, let it soak for 2 minutes, and then I wipe it out. It works beautifully. So I have my, I have a spoon here somewhere. I wanted to take my caramel sauce. So at this point, I have some beautiful homemade caramel, which I just love this. I'm going to just drizzle this right on top. You guys can kind of see what that looks like. I like caramel, so I go overboard. And this caramel will stay. I mean, you can put it in a container, refrigerate it, and then when you want to use it, and if it becomes solidified, you can throw it in your microwave for a second, and it will become a liquid again, and it works really, really well that way. I'm going to sprinkle just a little bit powdered sugar on top. So I just think that is a beautiful little dessert. 2 or 3 per person, 3 or 4. I mean, they're really good. They're going to want more than that. So I just think it's a really pretty dessert for like a holiday gathering. And like I said, make them ahead, have them on a sheet pan, pop them in your oven right before you serve dessert, and you're good to go. So it works really well. But yeah, any other questions, anybody?
Faye had one that said, what temp did you cook the brie at?
It was, I believe it was 375. And if it's cooking too fast for you, I believe, I think in an oven, a normal oven, you cook brie at 400, I believe. And in an air fryer, it would be, again, 25 degrees less. So 375 would be perfect. If it's not cooking fast enough for you, crank it up a couple degrees. You know what I mean? It's all good. That's the way, cooking is kind of adapting to things. And if you haven't done a lot of baking or whatever, or cooking in your air fryer, it's you kind of learn as you go. And I did the same, because I honestly, again, like I said, until I got this machine, we relegated it to a shelf, a storage shelf, because I just used it when I needed it. But now it's got a place on my counter, and it's not you guys see my kitchen is not really big. My counter space is at a premium. And literally, to have this, my daughter actually took the toaster away, and I yelled at her because I want toast. I like toast. And so I said, well, I'm going to try to toast things in the air fryer. We'll see how that works. But I haven't done that yet. So we'll see. I don't know. I may bring that toaster back. We'll see. But she uses it all the time to reheat pizza, to reheat croissants. Oh my gosh. The other day we made biscuits in it. The biscuits were so fluffy on the inside and super crispy on the outside. I mean, I did garlic bread in my air fryer a couple weeks ago, and the bread came out so that it was almost shattering. Like, when you bit into it, it was so crispy, so delicious. So, not a lot of, I mean, it had butter on it, but the bread itself, the crust was just delicious. So there's so many things you could do in it, but again, you can learn as you go. If you look at something and you say, I'm going to pop it in the oven, an oven takes a good, 15, 20 minutes to heat up. Try the air fryer. It doesn't take any time, and it doesn't heat your kitchen either. It's a nice little thing. If you're cooking small amounts, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah. And I put a link in the chat for everybody. We do here at BCLS have quite a few air fryer cookbooks, both on the shelf and digitally available with Hoopla. So I did put that search list there if anybody's interested in checking one out, or just stop by your local branch and see what we've got to offer. If you do make something delicious, we ask that you bring it in and share with us. Anyway, what you've learned tonight.
That's a good gimmick. I like that.
Yes, right.
Right.
We'll provide the cookbook, so you can provide the tasting for us. But yeah, everything looks so delicious, Mary. Does anybody else have any questions for Mary tonight? can either, you could put it directly into the chat, or you could unmute if you wanted to ask a question yourself.
Any holiday cooking questions, guys? If you have anything, that's one of the things to consider. If you're making something for Thanksgiving, you can roast Brussels sprouts in here and do it, toss them with a little tiny bit of oil and some balsamic vinegar, salt and pepper, pop them in there and roast those. They come out crispy and brown and just beautiful. And again, you're going to have to do them in batches, but it still works really well. It toasts up beautifully.
Oh, that sounds
Sweet
good.
sweet potatoes baked whole. If you're going to bake sweet potatoes, you can bake them whole and then mash them afterwards or whatever. So the air fryer works for that as well.
Wonderful. Well, it doesn't look like anybody has any questions. Oh, how long would you bake a sweet potato? Lisa asked.
I would think at least 15 to 20 minutes, maybe, depending on how big your sweet potato is. That's kind of what you have to consider. So like if one of the things I talk about always is doing chicken breasts. I've done chicken Parmesan in the air fryer that comes out just beautifully. I bread the chicken breast, but if I'm doing really thin ones, it's going to take about 10 to 12 minutes. If they're a little thicker, 15 to 16 minutes. And what I do is I bread them with just a little panko bread coating. I bake the chicken breasts first, then I put a little marinara on and some mozzarella on top of that. And I have chicken Parmesan in 12 to 15 minutes, not even. And it is delicious. And I can do 2 breasts in one basket, depending on how big they are. So, for 2 people, if I have 4 people, I can do them in both baskets at once too. So, but again, a lot of that depends on how dense your food is. So if the sweet potatoes are smaller, maybe 15 minutes, 14 minutes. If they're bigger, it could go up to 20. But, that's a lot less than what it would be in the oven too. So, a pretty good deal.
Cassandra, we have a question from the community room.
I was wondering about the foil and if you could put it on the bottom underneath the basket. My air fryer has an actual basket in it.
Okay.
Do I want to put the foil in the basket or underneath it?
Well, the only reason that I would put foil in it to begin with is for it not to stick on the actual basket part of it. So I would put it in the basket if that's where you don't want it to stick. Sometimes if I'm doing batches of something and it might leak, something might leak and it might, get like a little caramelized on the basket. I can put it on the foil and that way I can, if I'm doing batches of it, I can change the foil out and I'm not constantly cleaning my basket. I don't want, obviously if you have breadcrumbs and they drip to the bottom, they could start to burn a little bit. And one of the things you can do too is if whatever it is that you're cooking in the air fryer is fatty, say like a chicken wing or a chicken thigh or something that has some fat on it, you can add a little water to the bottom of your basket underneath that basket part. Let's see if I can, yeah. I can put the water in here, like maybe about a couple tablespoons, and then put the chicken on top of this grate, which is essentially your basket. And the water will keep whatever it is that's falling in there, like oil or grease or breadcrumbs or whatever, to stop it from burning. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's a good remedy to stop that. But I would put the foil on the basket itself because that's what you're trying to keep clean.
Okay.
Essentially, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Angela says salmon works really well in the air fryer. Had it on
yes.
Monday. Yum.
Salmon gets really crispy on the outside. Oh my gosh. It's like if, people have a really hard time sauteing fish in a saute pan. Sometimes they don't get it hot enough and it doesn't get nice and crispy, but in the air fryer, beautiful. It works so well. It gets really crispy, but again, you have to spray it with just a touch of oil because that helps in getting it crispy. It also helps in browning it too a little bit.
Wonderful. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Mary tonight? We have lots of thank yous and over here. Thank you for coming. And yeah, we'd like to thank you, Mary. If nobody else has any questions, I'll say thank you so much for joining us. I'm hungry. I don't know about everybody else.
Too.
I could use a little treat now. But again, thank you, Mary, for
You're
joining
welcome.
us tonight and for sharing your expertise.
Thank you for having me,
And-
and thank you all for joining me, in this on this kind of a cold night, and I appreciate it. I hope you guys have a great holiday. But use your air
Yeah, thank
fryer
you
as
so
extra cooking space. It's always good. It's always a good thing.
Absolutely. And I did, everybody should have received a link with their registration to the recipes. They're also listed on our website under the registration page, or if anybody were to need them, they could contact either Kirsten or I here at the library, and we'll have copies of them too. So yes, thank you, Mary. Have a wonderful
you.
night and a happy holiday.
You too. Thank you, Cassandra.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.